So it's almost like you stack them in tower,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
In your model, you stack them in towers, and there are squibbles which keep coming here and there, but what you really say is stack them in towers, and that's really what you're talking about. So if I were a parent, Brandon, uh, what should be the way I should prepare my kid, and what are the things that I should be ready for, because this is not the traditional thing. So you're almost putting them in a treadmill, right? Today, I have a kid, I put them in the treadmill, I hope something will come out of this treadmill, right? But if I were a parent, what would you advise uh, that I need to experiment? How should I approach this education, and therefore what would your advice to parents be?
So I just found out a couple weeks ago that I got a grant to write a book this summer on Egan for parents.
Mm.
uh,
Beautiful.
I'm very, very excited about it. And I'm just beginning to sniff around the beginning of that. And so is it okay if I just say one thing that I've been thinking
Yeah, of
about?
course. Yeah, please, please.
I think it's that we need to express to our kids, we need to help our kids experience this whole thing of education as an adventure that they are entering into.
Mm.
That we are embarked, we are already embarked on this adventure. We can't take it back now. Um, People have come before us trying to understand the world, trying to live well, trying to create harmonious and just societies. um, uh, we gain our strength from tapping into that rich tradition of people who have come before us. Um, uh, and that the truth of the world, which is true because of the brains that we happen to have evolved, is that, as Egan said, and as I quoted before, that we are surrounded by mystery.
Mm.
And what we know is fascinating.
Mm.
That there seems to be nothing in the world that is not terribly interesting once you get through the crust and get into the gooey inside of it. And so our primary task as parents when it comes to education, which
Mm.
is deeply connected to the kind of people that we want our kids to be,
Mm.
but it's not the same thing. It's not identical with it. Um, but insofar as education comes into it, we want to help them experience this.
Mm.
Part of this is by demonstrating a, maybe I should say, cultivating a omnivorous hunger for to learn about everything in the world ourselves. Is to in my context, right? Like one of the things that I do with my kids is I bring them as much as possible into um, uh, contact with people who are really great at explaining
Mm.
things about the world, who have themselves already fallen in love with weird things in the world and can help them fall in love with that too. This is the sort of thing that back in the day you would have needed to be an aristocrat and to hire, a tutor for your son or daughter in order to do this. Um, and nowadays you need to be able to go to a library and figure out, what are the 10% of children's books that are actually good, as opposed to the
Mm.
90% which are scams, which are garbage books. Um, it means that you need to know how to go onto YouTube
Mm.
and to find the educational channels that are actually good educational channels, that are, which is maybe 10% of the educational channels, that are not just, here is what here's what the standards say is most important to know, and so I will teach it to you in a very efficient way. Terrible, 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 terrible. um, but actually is made by somebody who has themselves fallen in love with biology or zoology or physics or math or whatever. My son is in love with a number of physics channels on YouTube.
Mm.
Kurzgesagt, for your listeners, just like the two that are the most wonderful and still unknown by a lot of people is the channel Kurzgesagt, which is German
Okay.
for in a nutshell, Kurzgesagt, quick wise, quick smart in German, which is about science writ large. It's animated and it's amazing. And then the channel Tierzoo, Tierzoo, which is about zoology.
Okay.
Which are the most Eganish channels ever. I'm sure they've never heard of Egan, but they're so Egan-y without realizing it, and they just help kids fall in love with the topics that they talk about.
So as parents, you're saying prepare that environment and spend time in actually getting them to love what they are learning and what they are studying, and build the build the big picture for them, and get the best experts to keep talking to them so that they are able to imagine. That's really what you're talking about,
Yeah.
right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I would say that the word,
Beautiful.
and I would say that using the definition of the word imagine that Egan used, Egan named his method imaginative education, which is a name that
Yeah.
I will never forgive him for inventing because imagination means all sorts of different things to all sorts of different people. For him,
Yeah.
imagination was his code word for when you love something and you think about it using stories and concepts and your body and an understanding of how it is heroic and just all of these kinds of understandings combined and mixed together was his word for imagination.